Hello, Karen. Okay, I've got your work up here. So in your writing, you're talking about blending modes, but you haven't really discussed how you use blending modes on the images themselves. You're talking about adding blending modes to the type, which is fantastic, but I would like to hear about your experimentation with blending modes on the images themselves. Really great technique, and I think one that you could really experiment here is to take that image of the clock, Big Ben, duplicate it a few times. Okay, and then add to experiment with different. So you have three different layers with the clock, and add a different blending mode for each layer, and see how that works. And you could even offset one a little bit. It's just there's so much you can do. So really, I'd like to really see you experiment more with blending modes in regards to the images. Um, as opposed to just type. It's fantastic that you're using blending modes on type. That's outstanding. But I'd like to see you talk a little bit more about blending modes with the images themselves and experiment more with blending modes on the images themselves. Okay, I noticed that the JPEG here only has the first example, so I'm going to have to do a lot of scrolling here. So bear with me on that. There's no JPEG or PDF. This JPEG only has one example. It's just, let me show you what it is. See, it's just the Big Ben example. So, okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. I think this is pretty good. Now, one thing I would recommend is not to stack your type in graphic design. Letter forms are meant to be viewed next to their neighbors, and that's how letter forms are designed. So stacking type like this is very rarely, if ever, successful. I don't ever stack type. I don't think I've stacked type. I don't think I've ever stacked type. I just don't think it's a good practice at all. And I think most professional graphic designers would agree with me for that reason, is that type is read to be meant left to right, top to bottom, not top to bottom. So in very, 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 very rare instances, would I ever think that stacking type is acceptable, specifically in a situation like this? I think you've stacked the type in the last one as well. So I would reconsider that technique of stacking the type. Right here, another thing I want to mention about typography is typically center align type creates symmetry in the counter space associated with that type, the negative space. And as we know, symmetry is not typically the most interesting thing in graphic design. So I would recommend left aligning this type right here. Okay, and then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to add Chicago to the first and third examples as well. Let's take a look at the second example. And this is probably the most effective of the three. And I think that I'm not positive, but I think I'm seeing blending modes on the background. So when I'd like to see you just kind of talk a little bit about how you're using blending modes, so you can share with the class how you've used blending modes. This is great. I love this distressed type up here. It kind of has to do with like this notion of fractured time. So I think that's really, really super interesting there. And then this one I think is interesting. One thing I would recommend is you got this kind of dimensional type here, this effect. I don't think you need it at all. This type is very legible. You don't have to assist the legibility or readability or visibility of this at all. So I would remove that other colored offset type for the background and just present it as is. Again, stack type, you want to adjust that. And then over here, this clock, I don't think it fits with the composition. I don't. I think that, to be honest with you, I don't even think you need a clock in the composition. I don't. I think that, does anyone really know what time it is? Just the busyness of this image here just really kind of eludes. It almost would be stronger without the clock, because you have this kind of subliminal, disregard of time, or just unaware of time as it's depicted in this urban scene, this downtown scene where it's just so busy, so many people going about their business, and nobody really seems to be concerned about time. So I think this composition would be better without the clock. I really do. Okay, and again, just keep practicing with blending modes. Try experimenting some more with before you submit your final. And again, a really great technique is to stack layers, duplicate the image layer, stack it, and change blending modes on each one, and you'll find some really interesting stuff. Now, one thing you found out is blending modes won't work unless you duplicate the layer, right? So if you just have type and you go just one layer of type and you go and add a blending mode to it, it's not going to do anything. You have to duplicate that layer. And same thing with an image. You duplicate the layer, then add your blending mode so that it has a chance, the pixels have a chance to work and interact with the pixels from the underlying duplicated image. Does that make sense? If not, let me know. I'll clarify. But that's a really important concept in blending modes. So keep that in mind. All right, fantastic. If you have any questions, please let me know. But try those changes. Let's see what we can come up with. If you have any questions or all you get stuck, let me know. I'll be glad to assist you. And looking forward to seeing your final submission. Again, if you have any questions at all, please let me know. Thank you very much, Karen.